Ladies and gentlemen, up next, we're delighted to have with us Mr. Kok-Chin, Executive Director, ASEAN from Smart Cities Council, also Chairman of Smart Cities Network, to share on the topic of ASEAN Smart Cities, trends, best practices, and opportunities. Let's put our hands together to welcome Mr. Tay.
All right, so first and foremost, I'd like for you to take a look at the map. The title of my presentation was actually requested by Cyberport. And with that, I'd like to thank Cyberport for inviting me, and of course, my contact from the South China Morning Post for inviting me to be here to speak on this topic. There'll be two main topics that I will talk about. First, about ASEAN, and for those of you who may not be familiar, it stands for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, 10 member states. And I send greetings from Singapore, where I'm based, although I consider myself as a global citizen, but focus in the area of ASEAN. The second area that I will talk is about trends, and how the Singapore government and how the ASEAN governments are looking towards building smart cities. So I stand here representing Smart Cities Council, a global organization based in the US, and I cover ASEAN. I'm also the chairman for Smart Cities Network based in Singapore. So first, what do we mean by trend? And what does it translate into opportunities? And how would you determine the best practices? So take a look at this diagram. The first, if you are to look at trends, you have to have that futures thinking, or some people call it strategic foresight. For those of you who may know, the Singapore government has a Center for Strategic Foresight. They plan, and conceptually, how Singapore government, and by the way, I have to qualify, I'm not speaking as a Singapore government citizen, okay? I'm a private citizen, but I am familiar because I work with them. So they plan conceptually 30 to 50 years. From concept, they plan master plan, urban plan, 10 to 15 years. So we are looking today a 10 to 15 years horizon. From the trends, they look at foresights. What are the drivers? And I think it's not unknown to many of us. There have been a lot of talks about it. Gen AI, of course, which I will talk about as well, will be the main drivers of transformation of the world. But from the trend, you look at opportunities, which I will cover for ASEAN. What does it mean for Hong Kong and China in general to look at ASEAN? A block of 10 member states, a population of 669 million, with over 4 trillion GDP, USD, in 2026. Bigger. And from there, you look at what we call design thinking into determining what are the future products that will come. And of course, you have heard some of that. And that I would consider best practices. So we look at trends, we look at opportunities, and then we look at best practices. So let me start with trends. More than 10 years ago, in 2012, you may have seen this TED Talk by the mayor of Rio de Janeiro. And he talks about the 4 commandments. A city of the future has to be green, socially connected, smart mobility, and the last commandment is the city of the future has to use technology. A technology that has to be present. And the Singapore government in 2012 accepted an offer by IBM. I was with IBM then, and we worked with the 2 government agencies, the Economic Development Board, EDB, and the URA, Urban Redevelopment Authority, to work with the agencies, over 20 of them, to do this thing called Smarter Cities Challenge, a $50 million of 100 cities around the world in 2012. 2 years later, and of course I need to qualify that the Singapore government would talk to many multinationals, like Cisco, I'm sure they have talked to, and Siemens, and those big organizations, Microsoft. They launched and announced by the PM in August 2014. So that was one of the trends. And by the way, not shown here, another trend that they look at, strategic foresight, was about the future of work. And that's why they pump in billions of dollars into skills future, for those of you who are familiar with what Singapore government, and every Singapore citizen above 40 years will get a few $100s per year to be trained. And that's a lot. So in 2014, of course, we have the Smart Nation movement. And 4 years later, there's this ASEAN Smart Cities Network. 26 cities, and as of last year, there are now 29 cities in ASEAN. 29 cities in this whole region is tremendous potential. So that's the two trends, going smart, going regional. What about globally? In 2020, there's a survey done by ESI Thought Lab based in Philadelphia. I still am in the advisory board. They look at 167 cities for smart cities, and looking at both advanced economy and developing economies. So what do they discover? Now, technology is an enabler, right? So when we look at technology, today, a lot of people will talk about cloud, about mobile, about AI and biometrics, but they ask the question of the city leaders, what will be the trend in the next 3 years from 2020, which is now? Remember, at that time, it was COVID. So digital twin, in my opinion, will be a major trend, almost 300% growth. And what's important is that's global. And then we have this augmented reality and virtual reality, the metaverse, and that's why Facebook is now renamed as Meta. And because of what OpenAI did in November 2022, we would expect an exponential growth of AI. And without question, AI will be the next transformative technology in the world. I bet on the internet, the World Wide Web in 1990s when I was in the UK. I stayed in the UK for 11 years. I was with Schlumberger, I did research with their different technology direction. The web was what we bet on. So the next transformation, as we know, we all use that smartphone. We're now in day one or day two of AI. And there's lots of people betting on it. So I think, no question, you all know that. So what are the opportunities that we are looking at? So in Southeast Asia, in case you do not know, the Economic Development Board of Singapore, together with INCOP, decided to do a report. And that reports on the projection for 2026, which is not too far away. If you look at the economy of China, 25 trillion by 2026, we'll be catching up with the United States soon. But ASEAN in 2026 will be 4.8 trillion. Now, I took the liberty to look at Wikipedia, right? Your economy, the Greater Bay Area, is 1.8 trillion. The biggest economy in ASEAN is Indonesia, 1.5 trillion. The Singapore is the third. Thailand actually is second. But remember, Singapore is only 5.8 million. So if you look at this, where are the main opportunities that you can see in ASEAN? First, there's a growing economy of middle class, and that's where the purchasing power is, right? And people grew up, natively using the internet, and it's going to be worth a lot more. So I would see there's tremendous potential that we can collaborate. So if you're interested in Southeast Asia, which is really my home base, my region base, I'm the advisor under the UN SCAP to the Cambodian government. I wrote the national guidelines for smart cities for Cambodia, and I advise the Philippine government. But there is a rotating chair of the ASEAN Smart Cities Network. What are the kind of focus they have? So if you look at the top focus is the silver and social, and I showed Hanoi in Vietnam. All three cities, Hanoi, Da Nang, and Ho Chi Minh City, all of them will have the Intelligent Operations Center, the IOC, or some people call it the Command Center. I'm working on a similar project in Philippines, in Iligan, in Camuna, in Santa Rosa, and of course, these are the third-tier cities in the Philippines. So from 30% of silver and social, you have built infrastructure. Like it or not, infrastructure will become the enabler because if you're not connected, you can't do much. And the quality environment, people looking at waste management, energy efficiency. So you sum that up in among the 6 pillars, it will be over 70%. So let's look at Thailand. And I think Thailand holds a lot of prospect. I was, from the airport driven, and I talked to the driver, and incidentally, I understand that a lot of Hong Kong people like to go to Thailand, right, as an option because it's cheaper. So Thailand, from 3 cities in 2019, they were the chair for ASEAN in 2019. Over the last 4 years, through the Digital Economy Promotion Agency, have decided that smart cities will become the national development platform. And I think that's what countries in ASEAN, and I keep telling them to set up the smart city agency in Vietnam when I spoke there, and likewise in Laos when I was there in February. So from 3 cities, they have now 30 cities. Huge potential. But what's the trend in there? And this, I think, will be the trend for cities. I start with this Amata Corporation. Amata is a large conglomerate. They started with 1 or 2 projects. They drew in $3.2 billion working with the Japanese, working with their local large conglomerate. I think the money is where the large conglomerate and overseas support into ASEAN cities that will drive smart cities in ASEAN. Second, Malaysia. I was born in Malaysia, born, bred, educated in Malaysia. So closer to home in Johor, just 2022, they attracted 16 billion US dollars, most of which come from Singapore. And that's why I believe that Singapore can be the hub for ASEAN if we are to work together with Hong Kong. And the Sarawak government, where I was there in October for the World Congress on Innovation and Technology, they invested 1.98 billion ringgit, which is equivalent to 431 million, on infrastructure alone. So there's tremendous potential. Singapore, and I think it's a trend, and by the way, Singapore has got a lot of funding. What we lack is the people applying for it. There are too many opportunities to get money. And I think the challenge, and that was tossed by Minister Josephine Teo, who is the current minister in charge for Smart Nation. She challenged the stakeholders in Singapore to come up with 100 use cases over a period of time. And I think that's a trend that has been going on for years in Singapore. Minimally, and I know I applied for some of this, and 70,000 Singapore dollars to do a proof of concept. Right? Sometimes proof of concept is expected to be free of charge. The Singapore government will be willing to pay without going through a tender process. They say, yes, they work with the large MNCs, Google, and over a period of time, they work with Microsoft, and I will show you one particular thing that it was announced in March at the GeoConnect Asia, and I attended that event as a speaker. Huawei integrated one map, which is the geospatial platform by the Singapore Land Authority, with AI. And AI must be validated through accurate data. So while we talk about data being the new oil, AI with accurate data embedded into application will become the next 3 to 5 years set of application worldwide. And this is just one of them. It says, conceivably, the first application in the world that integrates geospatial and generative AI, integrated with good data sets. Now, a lot of people say ESG, environment, social governance, and corporates go with ESG. We are a global partner for UN Habitat for the City Investment Facility. They have this program called the New Urban Agenda. There's a fourth sustainability, that's spatial sustainability. What a lot of cities do not have as a focus is the geospatial capabilities, and that's why the geospatial capability has to be integrated into smart cities planning, urban planning. And in February, the Singapore government announced 1 billion Singapore dollars, over 700 million USD. And so this is the partnership. Together with the Singapore Business Federation, we are venturing out into the Middle East. The Gulf Cooperation Council, they had made an announcement last year. So they're going to Saudi Arabia in May. So we are going there. So with that, thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tay, for bringing us an inspirational sharing. Thank you. Pleasure to have you.